What U.S. state is circular on the outside, but high in the middle? Ohio. Okay, this one's titled Why Boomers Insist They Had It Harder by Damon Cassidy. Oh, already ruffling up some feathers. Let's blow this gentleman up and let's party. Oh, this is a good title. Got me to click.
According to the Federal Reserve, baby boomers have officially become the richest generation to ever live, with a combined net worth of 4 times that of millennials. But despite the fact that no living generation will ever reach that level of wealth accumulation, many boomers still believe they got the short end of the stick. With a conviction so strong, people are already attacking the premise of this video without even giving me a chance to explain. So why is the wealthiest generation in American history so convinced they lived a life of hardship? Following
Off rip, this dude's killing it. But to be fair, I will say I don't think air conditioning became really normal until like the 70s or 80s. So that's shitty. But also, let's not forget background checks. I highly doubt those were a thing in 1982. Highly doubt it, okay? Just throwing that out there. Not to mention the credit score didn't come out until 1989, the year I was born, from downtown. Just want to throw that out there. But other than that, they probably did have it kind of shitty. Every generation's got a little shitty.
World War II, while both Europe and Japan faced the immense task of rebuilding from the war's catastrophic destruction, the industrial dominance of the United States, combined with nearly 70% of the world's gold reserves, allowed it to emerge as the dominant force in the global economy. And as the US accounted for half the world's industrial output, it was also backed by strong union representation and newly developed labor protections, which drove wages up by over 60% by the end of the war, allowing millions of soldiers to return home to a nation primed for economic growth, where between 1946 and 1964,
Real quick, just get a look at this. This is something I do want to bring up. One, just soak this in, okay? The marriage thing here. Soak it in, okay? One, could you imagine getting drafted to the NBA? I mean, you know what I mean? Getting drafted to the fucking war? 18? Here's a gun? You might die. Good luck, Junior. Not only that, you know how there's like a lot of the marriage thing. Back then, like imagine now, right? Like in modern time, you kind of have pressure to get married, but it really doesn't hit you till like 30. You get pressure to have kids, but it's really not till 30. Back then, you already went to war, and then when you got home, they're expecting you to have a wife and kids by 21. That's fucked up. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just saying. Kind of trippy stuff if you think about it. Take a hit. Take a chill. Soak it in. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there.
76 million baby boomers were born in the United States, an increase of nearly 50 million more children than the baby booms of the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia combined, setting the cultural expectation that the sheer size of the baby boom alone would guarantee continued American prosperity. But despite the baby boom being fueled by post-war economic expansion, where homeownership jumped from just 40% before the war to over 60% by 1960, it's crucial to
Let's not forget, no background checks. I just want to throw this out there. This is something that's serious. Could you imagine not having to have credit or a background check? The amount of shit you could get away with. Oh my God. My dad was the biggest bullshit artist there was. I just took his bullshit art and my mom's funny and kind of combined them, and I let people know I'm joking. But man, the stuff my dad used to be able to get away with. Impeccable. Just fucking incredible. Just think about the amount of shit you could get away with, that you could just lie about. Unreal, dude.
understand
Just throwing that out there.
that the majority of parents tasked with raising nearly half the nation's population had spent their own childhoods under a rigid and disciplinary model mirrored by the assembly line, as children contributed nearly 30% of household.
Wanted small boys apply on the first floor. No, dude. You imagine seeing this sign nowadays? Wanted, small boys. that's that's good.
household income leading up through the 1930s, where this live to work mentality was only compounded by the psychological weight of the Great Depression, followed immediately behind the responsibility of defending the country throughout the Second World War. And while history would later come to label this period as the golden age of capitalism, for the parents living through it, it wasn't about prosperity. It was about figuring out how to raise a child in a world they didn't recognize, creating a parenting model fundamentally rooted in fear and unspoken rules, as they prioritized permanence, routine, and material stability, while attempting to resolve their own childhood traumas and anxieties through the lives of their children.
These boys greet their dad as though they are genuinely glad to see him, as though they had really missed being away from him during the day and are anxious to talk to him,
Causing hundreds of thousands of parents to look for the aid of professionals to help mold what was increasingly seen as the perfect child, where Dr. Benjamin Spock's The Common Sense Book of Baby and Childcare became the defining voice of this movement, selling over 500,000 copies in just 6 months, second only to the Bible, where
This fucking geek. No offense, I'm just kidding. Gotta buy a book on to raise your kid. Now, what movie was that? Did you even read the baby books? When I have a baby, my girlfriend's gonna expect me to read the baby books. I don't think we've come that much further than back then.
philosophy emphasized a permission to be flexible, prioritizing emotional well-being and personal happiness over the strict disciplinary model their parents had experienced. However, this emphasis on flexibility and responsiveness was often twisted into permissiveness, where parents now believed they had the right to relinquish their authority.
You know what's crazy though? There was like this weird blueprint on how to raise your kid, and I think all of us, at least in America, we've all, let me go back right here. We've all kind of like, not everybody, but an overwhelming majority of us, all of our lives are eerily similar. If you really think about it, it's all kind of the same bullshit. So those damn baby books, man, and school. I think school's a big one. Kind of programmed. It's kind of bizarre, though. It really is. I mean, just soak this in for a second. I know not everybody had the same life. Some people had more money. I get that. But for the most part, it's all the same bullshit. It's kind of trippy, actually.
And replace it with the pursuit of material goods, resulting in cultural movements where psychologists, educators, and even Eleanor Roosevelt encourage parents to treat their children as adults, warning that if parents use too much discipline, it could lead to years of emotional damage. Where Lawrence Samuel, an American cultural historian, explained that Europeans who had taken jobs as camp counselors in the United States throughout the late 1950s were taken back by the brashness of American children. Campers were pseudo-mature and superficially self-assured, with respect given to adults only if the latter provided their worth. Having fun was pretty much all that mattered to these campers, with the descriptor spoiled coming up more than any other. American children were already highly materialistic, these counselors concluded, far more interested in things like cars, television, and business than their European counterparts. Parental love was expressed mostly by the means of things purchased for the campers, a stark contrast to the generational bond in counselors' own countries. With the New York Times,
it literally sounds no different than today. And to be fair, I was like super spoiled. Not like crazy spoiled. I had to have a job when I turned 15. It wasn't like that spoiled. But when I heard my aunt told me how spoiled my dad was, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then guess what? My kid's going to be super spoiled. But, I mean, if they were entitled back then, you know what I mean? I'm not blaming boomers for nothing. My parents were boomers. We had a gay old time. But it's just one of those, it's just kind of funny how nothing's really changed other than the fact that we have background checks and credit scores and we don't have the same purchasing power.
Stating, the overprivileged, overprotected, overindulged child of the oversolicitous parent may well grow up with problems as difficult to himself as those of the youngster who has had too few of the good things of life. Meanwhile, as the Cold War reignited the nation's growing fear of communist expansion, policymakers and educators began framing baby boomers not just as children to raise, but as a mass population to manage, arguing that a rapidly growing America would require greater centralization and government control at the expense of
I feel like I'm in school right now, and this is like playing in the classroom, like one of those movies. Like this dude's doing like a school project. That's how I feel. It's kind of cool. It's a little weird. Just want to throw that out there. I don't know if you're feeling the same vibe right now.
traditional values like autonomy and self-determination. As Robert Cook, director of the Population Reference Bureau, warned in Parents Magazine, how long will it be possible to maintain the American tradition of liberty for the individual in an increasingly crowded economy is another basic question, one for all Americans to ponder. However, instead of national reflection, economist Walt Rostow, chief advisor to Kennedy and Johnson, outlined in his 1960 Cold War Manifesto, The Stages of Economic Growth, that the final goal of American development was not political liberty or individual autonomy, but
Wait, right here. At the very top, high mass consumption. Oh, well, we made it.
high mass consumption, where he argued that technological innovation and material abundance, not population growth, would drive economic success, fundamentally shifting the economy to prioritize the short-term effects of the baby boomer size and future purchasing power, rather than establishing the jobs and systems needed not only for the boomer generation as they came of age, but for future generations to come, with teachers specifically being instructed to discourage individualistic thought and action by instead overly promoting group participation, turning the classroom into a tool to shape conformity. Preparing students to serve a collective, disciplined, and
Dude, I fucking hated school. Let's go back to the school scene. Look at this shit. I fucking hated it. It was the worst. I was so annoying. I was always going, but why? That was my favorite thing. Why? Just calling bullshit. They didn't like that, dude. I did summer school for years. Not because I wasn't smart. I just refused to do the work. Taking work home with me made no sense. School. I hated school. Let's fast forward a bit. Let's go. Bum 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 diddly diddly do. Let's fast forward, girl, in a fast forward world. Okay. Oh, this one's a good title. How baby boomers actually did experience worse inflation. I gotta hear this one.
And while America's guaranteed economic prosperity experienced the dollar losing 53.7% of its value between 1970 and 1980, or 10% more than the loss in value in the last 2 decades, baby boomers gravitated towards a leader who promised to restore order through less government intervention, low taxes, free markets, and deregulation, promising that the benefits would trickle down to the middle and working class. With Ronald Reagan's presidency,
dude, it's like all been the same shit since the get-go. If you really think about it, it's all the same shit. It's like nothing's stopped. But let's not forget, no background checks, no credit. I get it. That makes sense. The gold standard was in the 70s. They took that off, got rid of it. That makes sense. But it's the same exact shit today. Just throw in background checks, credit score, social media, and lack of jobs. It's the only real difference. That's great. Ronald Reagan. Classic. Not to mention, this dude was a fucking actor. And now we have another president that's an actor. That's awesome, dude. No, it's good. It's good. We can learn from history.
Solidifying a lasting ideological shift that redefined prosperity as the result of individual.
We're going to skip forward a little bit. All right, this one's titled Why Baby Boomers Experience with Entry-Level Jobs. Oh, this is the good shit. Let's get deep.
Support them, with a 1983 New York Times article, Baby Boom to Job Bust, highlighting how companies that continued campus recruitment had compounded the oversupply problem by raising their hiring standards. In fields like retail, which had not cut back on college hiring, recruiters found themselves in the enviable position of considering only the top graduates, while simultaneously requiring work experience. Don Franklin, director of executive recruitment for Gimbel's Midwest, noted, "A few years ago, we were happy to find students who had done well academically and were enthusiastic about our company. Now, in addition to good grades, most of my colleagues in retailing are hiring graduates who have had work experience, preferably in this field, and who played a leadership role in extracurricular activities." While Bob Junius, manager of college relations for Continental Bank, added, In the last few years, more and more graduates, particularly those in liberal arts, tell our recruiters they are willing to be tellers or secretaries if they cannot get into one of our management training programs. We've refused to do that because we suspect they would become frustrated and, as a result, less productive if we couldn't move them into a better job relatively quickly. And we can't guarantee that, causing baby boomers...
Job requirements have just been leveling up this whole time. Since then, this has been going on. It's the same shit. Except for now, it's reached like the pinnacle. We're at the peak, baby. That's so fucking funny. Except for back then, you could bullshit more. Now it's easier to check the receipts. I'm not going to say background check one more time. Background check. Throwing that out there. Shout out to Damon Cassidy for putting together this fucking 5th period assignment here.
Particularly the younger generation Jones, to simply prioritize career advancement above all else, where the yuppie stereotype, marked by designer clothing, luxury cars, and an aggressive obsession with climbing the corporate ladder, to become the symbol of a generation told to conform, redirecting their anxieties into productivity and endless material consumption, trading the potential of sustainable and shared growth for the illusion of individual advancement, no matter how fleeting or how unequal the outcome. Where despite the 2008 global financial crisis completely altering the trajectory of millennials' careers, and Generation X experiencing the largest net worth decline of any generation, a 2010 Pew Research survey found that 80% of baby boomers were dissatisfied with the direction of the country. By comparison, just 60% of millennials, 69% of Gen Xers, and 76% of silent and greatest generation adults reported the same. And even more revealing, 21% of boomers believed their standard of living was lower than that of their parents at the same age, compared to just 14% of all non-boomer adults, creating a generational cycle of arguing over who had it worse, rather than channeling any collective effort into actually changing the system. And so what I hope that we can begin to recognize is that fundamentally we're saying the exact same thing, that this cycle is continuously repeating itself, and it will continue to do so because we're failing to have effective and productive conversations. If our attempt at making things better is arguing over who had it worse, that's a recipe for disaster. It's
classic is what it is. This guy's good. I'm going to leave the rest of this video for you guys to finish. Let me go to the comment section. But, you know what's kind of funny is, like, I highly doubt during that time, you know, like, my parents who were born in the early 50s were just sitting around going, God, money. We've got it so good. I, like, highly doubt that. You know what I mean? Not to mention, I had somebody recently be like, man, I wish I was born in the 70s. And I was kind of sitting there like, well, if I was born in the 70s, by the time I was 35, I wouldn't even be able to have this job here. Like the internet, you know what I mean? So, like, I try and think, and I go, what would I even be doing? You ever think about that? Oh, I probably, like, the options we have now, there's so much more fun options, if you would say. Like this is like back then, you want to tell me you want to be on the radio or television, they're like, you're nuts. Nowadays, it's like, this is normal. So it's always a give and take. Let me read this shit. I hate the idea that just because you had it hard, so should your kids, because it would be unfair. That's so incredibly selfish. Well, they discussed earlier that they were spoiled, and now this generation's super spoiled. Obviously, everybody's family is different, but piece of shit. I'm sorry. Like, for instance, guarantee you, if my parents, one, if they were still alive, two, if they had the money, they probably would buy me a house. Get what I'm saying? Like, I think most parents are that nice. They just don't have the money to do so. My father is a boomer. He lived in his mother's house his entire life. When she passed away, he inherited all of her assets, including her house. He never once paid a single bill until cell phones became a thing, and then he had to pay for just his own cell phone bill. He never spent a penny raising me. I live with my mother. He thinks young people... He thinks young people have it easy, and he lived an incredibly hard life. Oh, shut the fuck up. Come on. I actually worked through the math by hand with my boomer grandfather, and his tone immediately switched from, you need to work harder, to, oh shit, it's bad. How can I help? That's what I was going to say. If one thing, like, think about it like this. The boomers, remember what I said earlier. You go to war if you're a dude. And then if you're a woman, you kind of expect the same thing. But in the kitchen, it's a war zone in there. I get it. Go to war, come home, get married, have kids by 21. Can you handle that? Something to think about on that end. Something to think about. So that's one thing that's kind of changed is like, no, don't move out at 18. No, don't go to war. Wait to have kids. You know, I think all those things are kind of, my uncle said this, or my cousin, should I say. He goes, if a couple only has one kid, we're actually going backwards. And if you have two kids, you're breaking even. You're basically keeping the population at an even. And so I don't know if that makes any sense, but so I don't want to say there's always a give and take with this shit. Which, because he wishes he had more kids, he only had one. But that makes sense, because if a couple only has one kid, then they're really only replacing one person. And that kind of was like, oh shit. Like, do I have to have two kids? Because I don't want more than two kids. No offense. Not that I'm selfish. It's just, you guys know what I'm saying. That's a lot. Fucking 3 kids, dude. You got to kind of give it to them, man. You know, how many families out there? You got 4 or 5 brothers and sisters? I'm an only child, you know? Like, okay, the only problem is that everyone can't have a business of their own or be a CEO. Somebody still has to pick up the trash. The trash man deserves to be able to earn a decent wage. Yeah, back to the fucking background check, credit score. I agree with this, but there was one point in time. I'll leave the link down to this below. You guys can finish this out on your own. But there was a point in time where, even today, 2/3 of all the money is small business. But back in the day, it used to be like 90% everything was small business. Most people, it was family-run business, self-employed. That used to be America. It wasn't until the last 30, 40, 50 years where it's become, we're all working for fucking Monopoly. Or like, I'm working for Google right now. See what I'm saying? So, it can be done. Like, owning a business doesn't mean you have 15 employees. Like, you could own your own small landscaping company, a pool boy, a small construction company, a handyman. You're one dude. Maybe you hire somebody once in a while. So I don't think starting a business is as hard as, I think you're making it a little harder. But honestly, it's probably the way the country is going to go, in my personal opinion. Or we're all just going to work for the big corporations. All hail Google. Anyway, solid talk. Shout out to everybody who bought a shirt, the Caddy Daddy Classic. Also, everybody that invested in some gold. I'll leave the link to the gold company down below that I use, Atlas Bullion. Invest in yourselves. One thing we learned from the Reagan thing, where all its money lost its value. Take notes. Anyways, hell of a talk. Unreal.